If you've ever tried to make soy milk at home, you've probably been there. You're drowning in a sea of conflicting advice online. Soak the beans, don't soak them, boil first, blend first. It's kind of frustrating, right? But what if you could just cut through all that noise with pure, relentless experimentation? Well, today, we're following one person's incredible quest to find the perfect soy milk method, and we're going to look at every single step, every failure, and every breakthrough.
So here's how we're going to break down this adventure. First, we'll set the stage with the perfect soy milk quest. Then, we'll get our hands dirty and figure out how to unlock the bean. After that, we'll dive into the alchemy of cooking. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the big lessons learned from the kitchen. This whole journey started with a really simple but super frustrating realization. Most of the popular recipes you find online are incredibly wasteful. A lot of the common methods leave up to 60%, 60% of the bean's nutrition behind in the pulp. As the experimenter put it, throwing away that much good stuff is, and I quote, very stupid. So, the mission was crystal clear. How do you get the absolute most out of every single soybean? We're going to follow this methodical journey step by step, charting all the trials, the errors, and the really fascinating discoveries that led to the final perfect recipe. Okay, let's dive into the first crucial stage, getting the beans ready. This is where some of the biggest wins in efficiency were found, and it all starts way before you even think about turning on the stove. So the process kicks off with a long soak. We're talking 18 to 24 hours, and you've got to change the water twice. But here's the key insight from all the experiments. For that second water change, you add exactly 1 gram of sodium bicarbonate. Why so specific? Well, because if you add more, say 2 grams, the soy milk ends up with this weird, soapy flavor. That tiny bit of baking soda softens the beans just enough, letting the blender break down the cell walls way more effectively, and that is key for getting everything out.
But you know what? As important as all that soaking stuff is, the single biggest breakthrough, the real game changer, came from the blender. This one discovery completely flipped the script on how to get the most out of the beans.
Okay, check this out. This is where the magic really happened. Most people, myself included, would just throw everything in a blender and let it run for one long cycle. But experiments proved that's super inefficient. The best method? 3 shorter, separate blends of the exact same length. This little tweak absolutely pulverizes the beans so much more effectively, releasing a ton of extra nutrition and flavor that was getting thrown away before.
And the impact was just huge. We're not talking a tiny improvement here. The person doing these tests found this change in blending technique literally doubled the efficiency. Just think about that for a second. Twice as much goodness just by changing how you blend. Amazing.
And here's the other detail you just can't skip. You have to filter and squeeze the milk out after each individual blend. If you try to blend all 3 times and then filter at the end, the pulp gets so dense that it just clogs up the filter bag and you can't get the liquid out. So remember, it's 1 blend, then 1 squeeze. Then the pulp goes back in, you add fresh water, and you do it all over again 2 more times.
All right, we've successfully extracted the maximum from our beans. So now we move on to the alchemy of cooking. The goal here is pretty simple. Perfect the flavor and texture. And, maybe most importantly, avoid burning the whole batch to the bottom of the pot.
Through a lot of careful trial and error, the ideal cooking time was nailed down to somewhere between 18 and 19 minutes. That was the absolute sweet spot to bring the soy milk up to the target temperature of 92 to 93 degrees Celsius, cooking it perfectly without scorching it.
And to get that perfect, unburnt result, this really specific stirring schedule was developed. You can actually start on max heat, which is great. You give it a stir at 5 minutes, then again at 8 minutes, and once more at 11. But after that 13-minute mark, that is the danger zone. From that point on, you have to stir continuously because that's exactly when it's most likely to stick and burn.
So, what about all that foam that bubbles up on top? Well, an experiment was actually run on the foam itself. They scooped it out, put it in a separate pot, and boiled it. And guess what? It didn't turn into liquid. It just made more bubbles. The conclusion? That foam is not soy milk. It's just unwanted gas carrying all those stinky, raw, beany flavors. You gotta scoop it out and toss it.
And finally, let's talk flavor. If you added something like pandan leaves during the cooking process, the fragrance would just boil away. The solution was surprisingly simple. Add the pandan extract immediately after you turn off the heat. Then you just let the soy milk rest for about 15 to 25 minutes. As it cools down, that beautiful fragrance actually bonds with the milk proteins, completely getting rid of any raw grass taste.
This whole quest for the perfect soy milk ended up revealing a lot more than just a great recipe. It actually uncovered a really powerful way of thinking about how to solve any complex problem, whether you're in the kitchen or not.
At the very heart of this process was a willingness to be brutally honest. When a technique didn't work, it wasn't debated or excused. It was just called what it was, a fail. And you know what? Accepting that something failed is the absolute first step toward finding a method that actually works.
So this entire journey was guided by a really clear set of principles. First, start small and build on what you know works. Methodically test one thing at a time, whether it's the baking soda or the blend time. The experimenter also said to ignore all the panicked, unqualified advice out there, and just accept that real solutions are often simple and kind of ugly, not flashy like you see on social media. It's all about thinking first to avoid mistakes instead of just rushing in and trying to fix problems later.
And the success of this whole mindset? It was undeniable. The final soy milk wasn't just delicious. It was perfectly smooth and incredibly stable. Get this, it stayed fresh for over 10 hours just sitting at room temperature, which completely disproved some customer complaints that it would spoil quickly. The method, proven through all this hard work, just worked.
So in the end, this whole journey from a frustrating problem to a perfect solution really shows us something powerful. It shows that with a little curiosity, a structured process, and the willingness to accept a few fails along the way, you can master almost anything, from a simple drink like soy milk to a much more complex skill. It all just comes down to a little bit of focused experimentation.